Captain Sarah Chen stared at the holographic display floating above her command console, her dark eyes reflecting the amber warning lights that had been flashing for the past 6 hours. The bridge of the UES Defiance hummed with tension as her crew worked frantically at their stations, fingers dancing across quantum keyboards while sweat beaded on their foreheads despite the ship's perfect climate control. "Status report," Sarah commanded, her voice cutting through the controlled chaos like a plasma blade. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his tactical station, his usually confident demeanor cracked with worry. "Captain, we're detecting massive fleet movements across 17 sectors. The Galactic Council has mobilized everything they have. We're talking about 8,000 ships, maybe more." Sarah felt her jaw clench. 8,000 ships. Against humanity's combined fleet of barely 300 vessels. The mathematics were brutal, unforgiving. But mathematics had never stopped humans before. "Any word from the other human colonies?" she asked, turning to her communications officer. Ensign Park shook her head, her fingers still working furiously at her console. "Nothing from New Terra or the Centauri settlements. All long-range communications are being jammed. The Council's not taking any chances this time." This time. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. For 3 years, humanity had been pushing back against the Galactic Council's increasingly restrictive policies. What had started as trade disputes had escalated into something far more dangerous. The Council, composed of 12 ancient alien civilizations, had grown tired of humanity's refusal to submit to their authority. Sarah walked to the main view screen, where the starfield stretched endlessly before them. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of their sensors, the most powerful military force in the galaxy was converging on human space. The Council had finally decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to exist as an independent species. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 40 years ago. They were the youngest species ever admitted to the Galactic Council, bringing with them technologies and perspectives that had revolutionized everything from medicine to quantum physics. Human innovation had advanced galactic civilization by centuries in just 4 decades. But innovation, it seemed, was exactly what terrified the Council. "Captain," Rodriguez called out urgently. "We're receiving a system-wide broadcast. It's coming from Council space. On screen." The viewscreen flickered, then resolved into the imposing figure of Counselor Vexstar, the Zenthari representative who served as the Council's current speaker. His reptilian features were drawn into what humans had learned to recognize as an expression of absolute authority. Behind him, the ornate chamber of the Council stretched away, filled with representatives from species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. "Citizens of the human colonies," Vexstar began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute power. "By unanimous decree of the Galactic Council, humanity has been declared a threat to galactic stability and security. Your species' continued expansion and technological development represents an unacceptable risk to the established order." Sarah felt her hands curl into fists. The established order. Code words for the Council's stranglehold on progress and innovation. Vexstar continued, his golden eyes seeming to stare directly at Sarah through the screen. "Effective immediately, all human colonies are ordered to surrender unconditionally. Your fleets will be disbanded. Your technologies will be confiscated and studied by Council scientists. Your populations will be relocated to designated worlds under Council supervision." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Sarah could feel her crew's eyes on her, waiting for her response. These weren't terms of surrender. This was the systematic dismantling of human civilization. Furthermore, Vexstar's voice droned on, "Any human vessel that refuses to comply will be destroyed without further warning. This is not a negotiation. This is a final decree. You have 72 hours to begin the surrender process." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Ensign Park was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "Captain, what are our orders?" Sarah turned away from the view screen, her mind racing. 72 hours. The Council was giving them 3 days to voluntarily destroy everything humanity had built among the stars. 3 days to accept slavery disguised as protection. "Rodriguez, what's our current position?" We're in the Kepler 442 system, approximately 6 light-years from the nearest Council patrol route. Good. Park, I want you to establish quantum encrypted communications with every human ship and colony you can reach. Use the emergency protocols. Captain, Commander Torres spoke up from the navigation station. With respect, what exactly are you planning? Even if we could coordinate our entire fleet, we're vastly outnumbered. Sarah moved to the central command chair but didn't sit. Instead, she placed her hands on its back and looked around the bridge at her crew. These people had followed her through 3 years of increasingly dangerous missions. They deserved to know what she was thinking. The Council made a mistake, she said finally. They assumed we'd react like every other species they've conquered. They expected us to calculate the odds, realize we couldn't win, and surrender. She paused, seeing understanding begin to dawn on several faces. But they've forgotten something crucial about humanity. We don't surrender. We've never surrendered. When the odds are impossible, we change the game. Rodriguez leaned forward in his chair. What are you proposing, Captain? The Council's strength comes from their unity, their ability to coordinate 12 different species under one command structure. But that's also their weakness. They've grown complacent over the centuries. Their tactics haven't evolved because they've never needed to. Sarah finally sat down, her fingers flying over her command console as she began pulling up star charts and fleet deployment data. We can't win a conventional war. But we don't fight conventional wars. We innovate. We adapt. We do things they don't expect because they can't imagine thinking the way we do. The bridge crew exchanged glances. They'd all heard stories about humanity's history, about how a species that had barely learned to fly had gone from wooden ships to space stations in less than a century. About how they'd fought wars against impossible odds and somehow found ways to win. Park, any luck with those communications? I'm getting responses, Captain. It's slow going with the jamming, but I've reached about 60% of our fleet. Colony communications are harder, but I'm getting through to some of them. Excellent. Send them the following message: execute Protocol 7. All ships are to disperse to predetermined coordinates and await further orders. Tell them the game has changed, and we're going to remind the Council why humanity earned its place among the stars. Protocol 7. Every human captain knew what that meant. It was the plan they'd hoped they'd never have to use, developed in secret over the past year as tensions with the Council had escalated. Instead of massing their forces for a conventional battle they couldn't win, humanity would scatter like seeds in the wind, using their superior mobility and innovation to wage a completely different kind of war. Rodriguez, I want a full analysis of Council fleet movements. Look for patterns, weaknesses, anything we can exploit. Already on it, Captain. I'm seeing some interesting things. The Council fleets are moving in standard formation patterns, the same ones they've been using for centuries. They're treating this like a policing action, not a war. Sarah smiled grimly. Because in their minds, it is. They've never faced a species that could threaten them. We're about to change that. The next several hours passed in a blur of activity. Reports filtered in from across human space as ships and colonies received their orders. The response was unanimous: even from the most remote settlements, humanity would not go quietly into the night. Captain, Torres called out from his station. We're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Harrison on New Terra. Put him through. The grizzled face of Admiral Marcus Harrison appeared on the secondary screen. At 73, he was one of the oldest serving officers in the human fleet, a veteran of the first contact missions and the early exploration efforts that had established humanity's presence in the galaxy. Sarah, he said without preamble, I've been coordinating with the other sector commanders. We've got preliminary reports on Council fleet movements, and it's not good news. How bad? Worse than we thought. They're not just mobilizing their regular fleets. Intelligence suggests they're bringing ships out of mothballs, vessels that haven't been active for decades. We're looking at potentially 12,000 ships, not 8. Sarah felt her stomach drop, but kept her expression neutral. 12,000 ships. The number was almost incomprehensible. Harrison continued, but there's something else. Our deep space monitoring stations picked up something strange. The Council fleets aren't just heading for our colonies. They're moving to encircle us completely. This isn't a conquest, Sarah. This is extermination. The word hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Extermination. The Council wasn't planning to relocate humanity or subjugate them. They intended to wipe them out entirely. How long do we have? Sarah asked. Based on their current speed and trajectory, the first waves will reach our outer colonies in 48 hours. Full encirclement will be complete in 72. Exactly the deadline they'd been given. The Council's ultimatum hadn't been a genuine offer of surrender. It had been a countdown to genocide. Admiral, Sarah said slowly, are you authorizing full implementation of Protocol 7? Harrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of a decision that would echo through history. All protocols are now active, Captain. Every contingency we've planned for, every experimental technology we've developed in secret, every crazy scheme we've discussed in the dark corners of strategy meetings. It's all authorized. Humanity's survival depends on our ability to do what the Council thinks is impossible. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts and her crew. Around her, the bridge buzzed with activity as her officers implemented orders that would change everything. Captain, Park said suddenly, I'm picking up something unusual on the quantum communication channels. It's not from any human ship or colony. Sarah frowned. What kind of signal? I'm not sure. It's encrypted, but the encryption method isn't anything in the Council's standard protocols. It's almost like... Park paused, her fingers dancing across her console as she ran the signal through various decryption algorithms. Captain, I think this is coming from inside Council space. From someone who doesn't want the Council to know they're talking to us. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. A secret ally within the Council? Or a trap designed to lure humanity into a false sense of security? Can you decode it? Working on it. The encryption is sophisticated, but there are patterns here that suggest whoever sent this knows our communication protocols. As Park worked, Sarah found herself staring at the star chart displayed on the main screen. Red icons marked the positions of known Council fleets, a vast net of destruction closing in on humanity's scattered worlds. But, somewhere out there, hidden among those same stars, human ships were taking up positions for a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Got it! Park exclaimed suddenly. The message is decoding now. Text began scrolling across her screen, and Park's eyes widened as she read it. Captain, you need to see this. The message is from someone calling themselves the Architect. They say they've been watching humanity's development, and they have information about the Council's true intentions. But, more importantly, they say they have something that could help us win. Sarah moved to Park's station, reading the decoded message over her shoulder. The text was written in perfect English, with an understanding of human psychology that suggested the author knew their species well. To the humans who refuse to surrender, the message read, you face an enemy that has ruled the galaxy for millennia through fear and technological superiority. But every empire has weaknesses, and the Council's greatest weakness is their belief that they are untouchable. I am someone who has seen their hidden fears, their secret failures, and their desperate attempts to maintain power in the face of change. Humanity represents everything they fear about the future, and that fear makes them vulnerable. If you are brave enough to risk everything, I can show you how to turn their greatest strength into their ultimate weakness. But the window for action is closing rapidly. Respond on frequency 7749.3 if you are willing to embrace the impossible. Sarah stared at the message, her mind racing. This could be the break humanity needed, or it could be the final trap that would seal their doom. Either way, they were already committed to the impossible. Park, prepare a response on that frequency. Tell the Architect that humanity has never backed down from the impossible, and we're not starting now. As Park began composing the reply, Rodriguez called out from his station. Captain, I'm detecting movement in the outer system. 3 ships, unknown configuration, heading directly for us. Sarah moved back to her command chair, her hand instinctively moving to the weapons control. Are they Council ships? Negative, Captain. The configurations don't match anything in our database. But, they're definitely alien in origin. Time to intercept? 47 minutes at their current speed. Sarah nodded grimly. Whatever was about to happen, it seemed the galaxy wasn't going to give humanity time to prepare. The war they'd hoped to avoid was coming to them, whether they were ready or not. All stations, battle readiness. Whatever those ships are, we're going to find out what they want. And, if they're here to start the war early, we're going to show them exactly why the Council should have left humanity alone. The bridge erupted into controlled activity as her crew prepared for contact with unknown vessels in a galaxy that had suddenly become far more dangerous and mysterious than any of them had imagined. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin, but the players in this cosmic game were proving to be far more complex than anyone had anticipated. In the depths of space, 3 mysterious ships continued their approach toward the UES Defiance, carrying with them answers to questions humanity didn't even know they should be asking. The galaxy was about to discover that when human survival was at stake, the impossible became inevitable. Hashtag system-wide warning, humanity brings down the Galactic Council, Part 2. The 3 unknown ships hung motionless in space, their sleek forms reflecting the distant starlight like liquid mercury. Captain Sarachan studied them through the viewscreen of the UES Defiance, noting details that seemed impossible to reconcile. The vessels appeared to be constructed from materials that shifted and flowed, as if they were alive rather than built. Captain Rodriguez reported from his tactical station, I'm reading some very strange energy signatures from those ships. Their power sources don't match anything in our database or the Council's known technologies. Are they armed? That's just it, I can't tell. My sensors are picking up energy patterns, but I can't identify specific weapon systems. It's like they're using technology that operates on completely different principles from everything we know. Sarah frowned, her tactical mind racing through possibilities. In her 3 years of service, she'd encountered vessels from all 12 Council species. Each had their distinctive technologies and design philosophies, but these ships looked like nothing she'd ever seen. Any response to our hails? She asked Ensign Park. Nothing on standard frequencies. But, Captain, remember that encrypted message from the architect? The ships appeared right after we sent our reply. Before Sarah could respond, the main viewscreen flickered and changed. Instead of the 3 mysterious ships, the screen now showed the interior of what appeared to be a command bridge. But, the figure standing before them made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. The being was humanoid, but clearly not human. Its skin had a faint luminescent quality, and its eyes held an intelligence that seemed ancient beyond measure. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that suggested the words were being translated in real time. Captain Chen, the being said, its gaze seeming to look directly into her soul. I am the one you know as the architect. My name, in your language, would be Keeper Valdris. I represent the Protean Collective, and we have been watching your species with great interest. Sarah stood slowly, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. The Protean Collective. She'd never heard of them, and that was impossible. Humanity's first contact protocols required extensive briefings on all known galactic civilizations. The Protean Collective? Sarah asked. I'm not familiar with your species. Valdris smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both alien and warmly familiar. That is because we have remained hidden for over 50,000 years. We are the species the Galactic Council fears above all others, the civilization they have spent millennia trying to forget. The bridge fell silent. 50,000 years of hiding. Sarah tried to imagine what could drive an advanced civilization into such extended isolation. Why reveal yourselves now? She asked. Because, Captain Chen, your species represents something we thought we would never see again. You are innovators, explorers, beings who refuse to accept limitations simply because they have always existed. The Galactic Council has spent 10,000 years creating a static civilization, one where change is feared and progress is controlled. They maintain their power by ensuring that no species ever becomes advanced enough to challenge them. Valdris gestured, and the screen split to show star charts that Sarah had never seen before. The familiar territories of Council space were there, but beyond them lay vast regions marked with symbols she didn't recognize. The galaxy is far larger and more complex than the Council has told you, Valdris continued. There are dozens of species they have systematically destroyed or suppressed, civilizations that showed too much promise, asked too many questions, or developed technologies that threatened their monopoly on power. Sarah felt a chill run through her. And you think humanity is next on that list? Not think, Captain. No. We have been monitoring Council communications for decades. The debate about what to do with humanity has been ongoing for years. Your species' rapid advancement terrified them, but your innovations were too valuable to simply destroy. Until now. Rodriguez leaned forward in his chair. What changed? 3 discoveries made by human scientists in the past 6 months, Valdris replied. Your research into quantum consciousness theory, your development of self-repairing nanotechnology, and, most importantly, your breakthrough in dimensional folding technology. Sarah's eyes widened. The dimensional folding project was classified at the highest levels. Only a handful of people in the entire human space even knew it existed. How do you know about dimensional folding? Because, Captain Chen, 50,000 years ago, my people developed the same technology. It was what allowed us to disappear from galactic civilization when the Council's predecessors decided we had become too dangerous to exist. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. An entire civilization forced into hiding because they had advanced too far. And now the same fate was being prepared for humanity. The Council isn't just planning to relocate us, Sarah said, the pieces falling into place. They're planning to wipe us out completely. Correct. The official records will show that humanity destroyed itself in a civil war, or fell victim to some natural disaster. The Council has done this before, many times. It is how they have maintained their power for millennia. Valdris paused, his ancient eyes studying Sarah's face. But there is another way. A path that could not only save your species, but bring down the Council's corrupt empire forever. What are you proposing? An alliance, Captain. The Protean Collective has spent 50,000 years developing technologies the Council cannot even imagine. We have ships that can phase between dimensions, weapons that can destabilize entire star systems, and, most importantly, we have detailed knowledge of every weakness in the Council's infrastructure. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. This was beyond anything she had dared to hope for. An ally with advanced technology and intimate knowledge of the enemy. But she had learned long ago that offers too good to be true usually were. What do you want in return? Valdris smiled again, and this time Sarah detected a hint of approval in his expression. Intelligent questions. Good. We want what your species has that ours lost long ago. Innovation. Adaptability. The ability to find new solutions to impossible problems. We have become powerful, but we have also become static. Your species could help us rediscover what we gave up when we went into hiding. Before Sarah could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the bridge. Rodriguez's hands flew over his tactical console as warning lights bathed the bridge in red. Captain! Rodriguez shouted over the alarms. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Council vessels, moving fast. The main screen split again, showing both Valdris and the tactical display. Dozens of ships were materializing around them, their weapons already charging. 43 Council ships, Rodriguez reported grimly. Mostly Zenthari heavy cruisers with Kytherian escort fighters. They've got us completely surrounded. Sarah's mind raced. The Defiance was a good ship with an excellent crew, but, against 43 Council vessels, they wouldn't last 5 minutes in conventional combat. Valdris, she said urgently, if you're really our ally, now would be an excellent time to prove it. Already in motion, Captain, Valdris replied. Observe. On the tactical display, the 3 Protean ships suddenly seemed to shimmer and fade. For a moment, Sarah thought they had fled, abandoning humanity to face the Council alone. Then, she realized what she was seeing. Rodriguez, are you still reading the Protean ships? That's impossible, Captain. They're inside the Council formation. How did they move that fast? Sarah watched in amazement as the Protean vessels materialized within the Council fleet, having somehow bypassed every sensor and defensive system without triggering a single alarm. It was like watching ghosts made manifest. What happened next defied every principle of space combat Sarah had ever learned. The Protean ships didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, waves of energy erupted from them, and, where that energy touched the Council ships, reality itself seemed to bend and twist. My God, Ensign Park whispered. They're not destroying the ships. They're unmaking them. Sarah watched in fascination and horror as Council vessels simply ceased to exist. Not exploded or damaged, but literally ceased to be, as if they had never been built in the first place. Within minutes, the entire Council fleet had been reduced to empty space and scattered particles. Captain, Valdres said from the screen, his voice carrying a note of grim satisfaction, this was a demonstration of what the Protean Collective can accomplish. But it was also a declaration of war. The Council now knows we still exist, and they will respond with everything they have. Sarah nodded, still processing what she had witnessed. What happens now? Now, Captain, we begin the real war. Not just for your species' survival, but for the liberation of the entire galaxy. But first, we need to rescue your people. The Council's fleets are already moving against your colonies, and conventional resistance will not be enough. Our Protocol 7 operations will delay the inevitable, but cannot stop it, Valdres interrupted. The Council has committed resources to this campaign that dwarf anything they have used in centuries. But, with our assistance, your guerrilla tactics could become something far more effective. Sarah made a decision that she knew would change everything. What do you need from us? Full military cooperation and access to your dimensional folding research. With our knowledge of dimensional phase technology and your innovative approaches to quantum mechanics, we can create weapons and ships that will make today's demonstration look like a child's toy. And the end goal? Complete dismantling of the Galactic Council's power structure. They have maintained control through fear and technological superiority for too long. It is time for the galaxy to know freedom again. Sarah looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. These people had followed her through 3 years of increasingly dangerous missions. Now she was asking them to commit to a war that could reshape the entire galaxy. All hands, she announced over the ship's communication system. This is the captain. What you're about to hear is classified at the highest levels, but you all deserve to know what we're facing. She quickly outlined the situation, from the Council's true intentions to the unexpected alliance with the Protean Collective. When she finished, the bridge was silent for a long moment. Orders, Captain? Rodriguez asked finally. We're going to do what humans do best, Sarah replied. We're going to take an impossible situation and find a way to win. But, this time, we're not doing it alone. Over the next several hours, the UES Defiance underwent modifications that transformed it from a human warship into something entirely new. Protean engineers worked alongside human technicians, installing technologies that seemed to violate fundamental laws of physics. Sarah watched from the bridge as her ship's capabilities expanded exponentially. Dimensional phase drives that would allow them to move through folded space. Quantum destabilization weapons that could unmake matter at the subatomic level. Shield systems that operated by shifting the ship slightly out of phase with normal reality. Captain, Park reported, I'm receiving communications from human fleets across 17 sectors. Word is spreading about what happened here, and morale is improving dramatically. What's the status on our colonies? Mixed news. The Council's advance fleets have reached 3 of our outer settlements, but the results aren't what they expected. Colony defense forces have been implementing Protocol 7 tactics, and they're causing significant damage before withdrawing. Sarah smiled grimly. Protocol 7 was working exactly as designed. Instead of trying to hold fixed positions against overwhelming odds, human forces were using hit-and-run tactics, striking at supply lines and communication networks before fading back into the vastness of space. The Council is learning what many of Earth's historical enemies learned too late, she said. You can't defeat an enemy who refuses to fight by your rules. Valdris appeared on the screen again, his expression urgent.
Captain, we have received intelligence that changes everything. The Council is not just planning to destroy humanity.
They are preparing to eliminate all the species they consider threats, starting with yours but not ending there.
How many species? At least 47 civilizations marked for extinction.
The Council calls it the Great Cleansing, a campaign to permanently establish their dominance over the galaxy by eliminating any potential challenges to their authority.
Sarah felt sick. 47 civilizations.
Billions, perhaps trillions of sentient beings marked for death because they might someday pose a threat to the Council's power.
We have to warn them, she said.
We already are, Valdris replied. Protean agents throughout the galaxy are making contact with species on the Council's target list. Many are willing to join our alliance, but coordination will be crucial.
Sarah studied the star charts now displaying the positions of potential allies.
Species she'd never heard of, scattered across thousands of light-years, all facing the same fate as humanity. This changes our strategy completely, she realized.
We're not just fighting for human survival anymore. We're leading a galactic revolution.
Precisely, Captain. And the first phase of that revolution begins now. Your fleet's modified ships are about to become the core of something the galaxy has never seen, a truly united resistance against tyranny.
As if summoned by his words, alerts began flashing across every station on the bridge.
Ships were dropping out of hyperspace around them, but these weren't Council vessels. Human ships, modified with Protean technology, were arriving from across human space. And, with them came vessels of design Sarah had never seen before, representatives of species that had been hiding in the galactic shadows for decades, waiting for a chance to strike back at their oppressors. Captain, Rodriguez reported, his voice filled with awe, I'm reading over 200 ships on approach.
Human, Protean, and at least 12 other species I can't identify. Fleet composition? Everything, Captain.
Battleships, cruisers, fighters, support vessels, and some ships that don't fit any category I know. And, Captain, they're all running the same quantum encryption signatures.
They're all part of our alliance. Sarah stood and straightened her uniform.
Through her view screen, she could see the fleet assembling around them, a collection of vessels that represented dozens of species united in common cause. The war she had expected to fight with a few hundred human ships had become something entirely different.
Open a channel to all ships, she ordered. Channel open, Captain. Sarah looked out at the assembled fleet, knowing that her next words would be heard by beings from across the galaxy, species that had suffered under the Council's oppression for millennia. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Defiance, speaking on behalf of the United Human Fleet and our allies in the Galactic Liberation Alliance.
For too long, the Galactic Council has maintained power through fear, suppression, and the systematic elimination of any civilization that dared to reach for something better.
Today, that ends.
She paused, letting her words sink in across the countless worlds and species represented in the fleet around her.
We are not here to conquer or to replace one tyranny with another.
We are here to ensure that every sentient species in this galaxy has the right to determine its own destiny, to explore, to innovate, and to grow without fear of retribution from those who would keep us all in chains. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across dozens of species and hundreds of ships, voices joined together in affirmation. Not in any single language, but in a harmony of purpose that transcended words. The Council's fleets are vast and their weapons are powerful, Sarah continued. But they have forgotten the most important truth in the galaxy, that free beings, fighting for their survival and their future, are capable of achieving the impossible. As if to punctuate her words, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. The Council's advanced fleets, confident in their overwhelming superiority, were encountering resistance unlike anything they had ever faced. Human guerrilla tactics, enhanced with Protean technology and supported by dozens of allied species, were turning what should have been easy victories into costly defeats. Admiral, Valdris said, addressing Sarah with a title that she realized fit her new role perfectly.
The first phase is complete.
Our alliance is formed, our fleets are enhanced, and the galaxy is awakening to possibilities they had forgotten existed.
Sarah nodded, accepting the responsibility that had fallen to her. She was no longer just a human ship captain fighting for her species' survival.
She was now the leader of a galactic revolution that would determine the future of civilization itself. "Then, let's show the Council what happens when the impossible becomes inevitable," she said. "All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. It's time to take this war to them." As the assembled fleet prepared to move, Sarah allowed herself one moment to appreciate the magnitude of what they had achieved. In less than 24 hours, they had gone from a desperate last stand to leading the largest alliance in galactic history. The Council had intended to destroy humanity quietly and efficiently. Instead, they had awakened something that would shake the foundations of their empire to its core. #System-wide warning, humanity brings down the Galactic Council. Part 3. The Nexus Prime system had been the heart of Galactic Council power for over 8,000 years. Its massive space stations and orbital defense platforms had never fallen to any enemy force in recorded history. Today, Admiral Sarah Chen intended to change that. Standing on the bridge of the UES Defiance, now the flagship of the Galactic Liberation Alliance, Sarah watched as her fleet of over 3,000 ships took position around the system's outer edge. What had begun as humanity's desperate fight for survival had become something far greater, the final battle for galactic freedom. Admiral, Commander Torres reported from his expanded tactical station. "All fleet elements report ready. We have ships from 47 species in formation, and the Protean vessels are standing by for dimensional phase insertion." Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that showed the Council's defenses. Massive orbital fortresses bristled with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Energy shields powerful enough to withstand supernova-level explosions protected the system's critical infrastructure. And, at the center of it all sat the Council Citadel, a structure so vast it had its own gravitational field. "Status report from our ground teams?" Sarah asked. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his intelligence console. "The liberation cells are in position on 12 Council worlds. Our allied species have successfully infiltrated key positions throughout their infrastructure. When we begin the assault here, simultaneous operations will commence across their entire territory." 3 months. That's how long it had taken to transform a desperate resistance into a coordinated rebellion that spanned the galaxy. The Council's attempts to crush the human colonies had failed catastrophically, with their forces encountering not just human determination, but an increasingly sophisticated network of allied species that had been waiting decades for this moment. Admiral, Ensign Park announced, "We're receiving a transmission from the Council Citadel. It's Speaker Vextar. Put him on screen." The familiar reptilian features of the Zenthari leader appeared on the main view screen, but Sarah immediately noticed changes. Vextar's usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his golden eyes showing signs of strain and exhaustion. Behind him, the once pristine council chambers showed signs of hasty modifications and defensive preparations. "Admiral Chen," Vextar began, his voice carrying none of its former authority. "I come to you with an offer of negotiation. The Council is prepared to discuss terms for a peaceful resolution to this conflict." Sarah studied the alien leader's face, noting the subtle signs of desperation that her months of psychological briefings had taught her to recognize. The proud, unshakable ruler who had declared humanity's extinction was now seeking terms. "I'm listening, Speaker. The Council acknowledges that certain policies regarding species development may have been overly restrictive. We are prepared to grant full autonomy to human space and recognize your species' right to independent technological advancement." "And what about the other 46 species marked for extinction in your Great Cleansing?" Sarah asked quietly. Vextar's composure cracked slightly. "How did you?" He stopped himself, regaining some measure of control. "Those operations can be suspended. We can discuss a new framework for galactic governance, one that provides greater freedoms for all member species." Sarah shook her head. "You don't understand, Speaker. We're not here to negotiate improvements to your system. We're here to replace it entirely." "Admiral, you must understand the implications of what you're proposing," Vextar said urgently. "The Council has maintained galactic stability for millennia. Without our guidance, the galaxy would descend into chaos." "Your stability was built on suppression and genocide," Sarah replied coldly. "You've systematically destroyed or enslaved any civilization that showed promise, any species that dared to innovate beyond your approved limits. That's not stability, Speaker.
That's tyranny.
Behind Vexstar, other council members became visible as they moved frantically around the chamber.
Sarah could see representatives from all 12 ruling species, their usual calm replaced by barely controlled panic.
We can change, Vexstar insisted.
The council can adapt, can become more inclusive. There's no need for this destruction.
Change?
Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it.
Speaker, your species has had 8,000 years to change.
Instead, you've spent that time perfecting the art of oppression. The galaxy has given you enough chances.
She gestured to her crew, and the transmission ended. Around her, the bridge hummed with activity as final preparations for the assault were completed.
Valdris, Sarah said, addressing the Protean leader whose image appeared on a secondary screen. Are your forces ready?
Affirmative, Admiral.
Our dimensional phase ships are prepared to bypass their outer defenses entirely.
The Council's shields and weapons are powerful, but they operate within normal spacetime.
We do not.
Sarah turned to address her fleet.
All ships, this is Admiral Chen.
Today we end 8,000 years of tyranny. Not for conquest, not for revenge, but for the simple right of every species in this galaxy to determine its own destiny. She paused, looking around at her diverse crew. Humans, yes, but also representatives from dozens of species that had joined their cause. The Bridge of the Defiance had become a symbol of what the galaxy could be, different species working together as equals, their varied perspectives and abilities combined into something stronger than any of them could achieve alone.
Begin the assault. What followed was unlike any battle in recorded galactic history.
The Council's massive defensive installations, built to withstand conventional attacks from within normal space, found themselves facing an enemy that operated by completely different rules. Protean ships phased through their shields as if they didn't exist, appearing inside defensive perimeters to strike at critical systems.
Human vessels, enhanced with revolutionary technology, moved with unprecedented speed and unpredictability.
Allied species brought their own unique capabilities to bear, creating a symphony of destruction that the Council's ancient tactical doctrines had no answer for.
Admiral, Torres reported, the outer defense grid is down.
We're reading massive explosions throughout their orbital platforms.
What about casualties?
Surprisingly light, both for us and them. The Protean technology is allowing us to disable their systems without necessarily destroying their ships.
We're taking prisoners, not just eliminating the enemy. Sarah nodded approvingly.
This wasn't a war of extermination, despite the Council's attempts to make it one. Every species in the galaxy would have to live together after this conflict ended, and that meant avoiding unnecessary bloodshed.
Admiral, Park announced urgently, I'm receiving multiple transmissions from Council worlds throughout the galaxy.
The simultaneous operations are underway, and the results are beyond our projections.
Specifics?
On 17 worlds, local populations have risen up to support our allied forces. The Council's member species are joining the rebellion. It appears that the oppression we've been fighting against extended to their own populations as well.
Sarah felt a moment of profound vindication.
They hadn't just been fighting for humanity's survival. They had been fighting for the freedom of the entire galaxy, including species that had been forced to serve as the Council's enforcers.
Admiral Chen, Valdris' voice came through the communications system.
Our phase ships have reached the Council citadel itself. We're in position to begin the final assault.
Sarah looked at the massive structure on her view screen. The Council citadel had been the symbol of galactic authority for millennia. Its destruction would send a message that would resonate across every world in known space.
But, as she prepared to give the order, she hesitated.
Destroying the citadel would certainly end the Council's power, but it would also eliminate any chance of a peaceful transition to whatever came next.
Valdris, can your people disable the citadel's defenses without destroying the structure itself?
Possible, but more challenging. May I ask your reasoning, Admiral? Because we're not just tearing down the old system. We're building a new one.
And, for that new system to have legitimacy, it needs to be built on justice, not just victory. Sarah made a decision that she knew would define not just the end of this war, but the beginning of whatever came after.
All ships, modify your targets. Disable, don't destroy.
I want the council leadership captured, not killed. We're going to try them for their crimes, not simply execute them. The assault on the Citadel became a precision operation unlike anything attempted in galactic history. Protean ships phased through the structure's defenses to disable critical systems from within. Human Marines, equipped with advanced armor and weapons, boarded the station to secure key areas. Allied forces from dozens of species worked together to overcome resistance while minimizing casualties. Within 4 hours, it was over. The Council Citadel, unconquered for 8 millennia, had fallen to the combined forces of the Galactic Liberation Alliance. Sarah stood in the main council chamber, surrounded by the captured leadership of the galactic government. The 12 representatives who had ruled with absolute authority now sat as prisoners, their fate to be determined by the very species they had oppressed. Speaker Vexstar, Sarah said, addressing the defeated Zenthari leader. You claimed that your council maintained galactic stability. But, stability at what cost? How many species did you destroy? How many civilizations did you prevent from reaching their potential? Vexstar remained silent, his golden eyes fixed on the floor. For 8,000 years, you told the galaxy that progress beyond your approved limits was dangerous. That innovation without your permission was a threat to stability. But, you were wrong. Progress isn't dangerous. Stagnation is. Sarah turned to address the assembled prisoners and the cameras that would broadcast her words across the galaxy. Today marks the end of the old order, but, more importantly, it marks the beginning of a new one. The Galactic Liberation Alliance doesn't seek to replace the Council's tyranny with our own. We seek to create something that has never existed in this galaxy, a true confederation of free species, working together as equals. She gestured to the diverse group of beings around her, representatives from dozens of worlds and civilizations. This is what the Council feared most. Not any single species becoming too powerful, but all species working together to achieve their full potential. They were right to fear it, because this cooperation represents everything their system was designed to prevent. Over the following weeks, the transition began. Council worlds were liberated one by one, often with minimal resistance as local populations rose up to support the alliance. The vast bureaucracy that had enforced the Council's will was dismantled and replaced with voluntary cooperation between sovereign species. It wasn't perfect. Decades or centuries of conditioning couldn't be undone overnight, and some worlds struggled to adapt to their newfound freedom. But, across the galaxy, a new spirit of innovation and exploration began to emerge. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, now orbiting Earth for the first time in months, Sarah watched reports from across known space. Human colonies that had been marked for extinction were now thriving centers of research and development. Species that had been forcibly kept at primitive technology levels were making rapid advances. The galaxy was experiencing a renaissance of discovery unlike anything in its recorded history. Admiral, Torres said, approaching her command chair. We've received the final reports from the war crimes tribunals. The Council leadership has been found guilty on all charges, but they've accepted the sentence of exile rather than execution. Sarah nodded. Even in victory, they had chosen justice over revenge. The former Council leaders would spend their remaining years on a remote world, stripped of power but allowed to live. It was more mercy than they had shown their victims, but it set a precedent for the kind of civilization they were trying to build. What's the status of the new Galactic Assembly? First session begins next month. Representatives from over 300 species have confirmed their participation. The human delegation is ready, and we've confirmed that the Assembly will operate on principles of voluntary cooperation rather than enforced compliance. Sarah smiled. 300 species. The old council had claimed to represent the galaxy with only 12 ruling civilizations. The new assembly would actually represent the galaxy's incredible diversity. Any word on the exploration initiatives? Excellent news on that front. With the Council's restrictions lifted, we've already identified 17 regions of space that were declared off-limits for security reasons. Initial surveys suggest these areas contain hundreds of unexplored systems, possibly with indigenous species or lost civilizations. Sarah stood and walked to the viewscreen, where Earth hung in all its blue and green glory.
Humanity's homeworld had nearly been destroyed by the Council's plans for genocide.
Instead, it had become the birthplace of galactic liberation.
"Ma'am," Ensign Park called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Protean Collective. Keeper Valdris wants to speak with you." "Put him through."
Valdris appeared on the screen, but Sarah immediately noticed something different about the ancient being.
He seemed somehow more vibrant, more alive than he had during the war.
"Admiral Chen," Valdris said, "I wanted to personally thank you and your species for what you have accomplished. For 50,000 years, my people have hidden in the shadows, afraid to engage with the galaxy because of what it might cost us.
You have shown us that engagement doesn't have to mean domination.
Your people were crucial to our victory, Valdris. This wouldn't have been possible without the Protean Collective. Perhaps. But, more importantly, working with humanity and the other Alliance species has reminded us of something we had forgotten. Innovation isn't just about developing new technologies.
It's about developing new ways of thinking, new approaches to old problems.
Your species has given us back our capacity for wonder."
Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The Alliance hadn't just freed the galaxy from tyranny. It had helped even its most advanced members rediscover what made civilization worth preserving.
What's next for the collective? We're emerging from hiding, taking our place as partners in this new galactic community. Our scientists are collaborating with researchers from dozens of species, and the results are already exceeding our projections. It seems that diversity of thought really is the key to unlimited progress.
After the transmission ended, Sarah remained on the bridge for several hours, reading reports and reviewing plans for the future.
The war was over, but, in many ways, the real work was just beginning. Building a free and cooperative galactic civilization would be more challenging than defeating the Council had been. But she was optimistic. The same qualities that had allowed humanity to survive the Council's genocide attempt would serve them well in the tasks ahead. Innovation, adaptability, and the stubborn refusal to accept that something was impossible just because it had never been done before.
"Admiral," Torres said quietly, "if I may ask, what do you think will be the most important legacy of what we've accomplished?" Sarah considered the question carefully.
"I think it will be the proof that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. The Council tried to maintain power by keeping species separated and suspicious of each other. We've shown that when different perspectives work together, there's no limit to what can be achieved." She turned back to the view screen, where the stars stretched endlessly into the distance. Somewhere out there, on hundreds of worlds, beings were working together to build something unprecedented, a truly free galactic civilization. The old Council used to say that there were natural limits to progress, that some boundaries shouldn't be crossed, Sarah continued.
But they were wrong.
The only real limit to what we can achieve is our willingness to imagine something better and work together to make it real. As if to emphasize her point, alerts began flashing across multiple stations.
But these weren't warnings of enemy attacks or system failures.
They were notifications of discoveries, breakthroughs, and achievements being reported from across Alliance space. "Ma'am," Park reported excitedly, "we're receiving word of first contact with a previously unknown species in the Outer Rim. They've been trying to contact the galaxy for centuries, but the Council classified them as primitive and blocked all communication."
"And there's more," Rodriguez added. 3 separate research teams have reported major breakthroughs in faster-than-light communication.
Working together, they've achieved something none of them could have managed alone. Sarah smiled, feeling a deep sense of rightness about the path they had chosen. This was what the galaxy was supposed to be, not a static empire controlled by fear, but a dynamic community driven by curiosity and cooperation.
"Set course for the new discovery," she ordered.
"It's time to welcome another species to the family." As the UES Defiance turned away from Earth and headed toward the unknown, Sarah reflected on how much had changed. 6 months ago, she had been a human captain fighting desperately to save her species from extinction. Now she was an admiral in a galactic alliance that represented freedom and progress for billions of beings. The Council had been wrong about many things, but they had been right about one crucial fact: humanity was dangerous to the established order. What they hadn't understood was that the established order deserved to be challenged, overthrown, and replaced with something better.
The galaxy would never be the same.
And, for the first time in 8,000 years, that was cause for celebration rather than fear. In the depths of space, new civilizations were taking their first steps toward the stars, secure in the knowledge that they would be welcomed as partners rather than conquered as subjects. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of true galactic civilization had finally begun.